There is a man in recorded history who commanded the loyalty of 1,000,000 soldiers, the obedience of 40 million citizens, and the fear of every king on earth. He did not do it with speeches. He did not do it by being liked. He did it by being utterly, absolutely, unmistakably himself, and never once apologizing for it. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and the most remarkable thing about him is not his power. It is this. In the private journals he never intended the world to read, he wrote not of conquest, not of glory, but of the quiet, daily, ruthless practice of governing himself. That is the secret nobody tells you. The world does not grant you worth. It reads your worth from you, from the signals your behavior transmits every single day. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you are broadcasting a frequency. The question is, what frequency are you on? Most people are broadcasting apology. They are broadcasting doubt. They are broadcasting, please accept me, please don't leave, please be okay with what I just said. And the world around them, their colleagues, their friends, their partners, is receiving that signal perfectly and responding to it perfectly, which is to say, treating them as someone who needs to earn their place in every room they walk into. But there is another frequency. It is not arrogance, it is not performance. It is something older and quieter and infinitely more powerful. The Stoics called it dignitas, a word that has no perfect English translation because modern culture has largely forgotten the concept it describes. Dignitas is not how you feel about yourself. It is how you carry yourself. It is the architecture of your daily behavior. It is the sum of 1,000 small choices made when nobody is watching that become visible to everyone when they are. Today we are going to dissect that architecture. 7 laws, not suggestions, not habits, laws, in the sense that they operate whether you follow them or not, violate them, and you teach the world to undervalue you, honor them, and you teach the world something it will not forget. Stay until the end. Law 7 is the one that will change how you move through rooms forever. Law 1. The law of internal authority. Your worth is established in private before it exists in public. In 161 AD, a philosopher became emperor of Rome. He had spent 20 years before that not chasing power, not performing greatness, not positioning himself. He spent them keeping promises to himself. Small ones. Private ones, painful ones. He woke before dawn in the cold. He studied. He trained his mind the way a soldier trains his body, not for display, but because the alternative, a mind left soft and ungoverned, was to him a form of death. And when power finally arrived, it found a man already forged, already whole. Here is the law. Authority over others is impossible before authority over yourself. And authority over yourself is impossible without a private record of kept promises. This is deeper than discipline. Most people think of self-discipline as a performance, something you do so others see you as strong. But the Stoics understood something more precise. Every time you make a private commitment and break it, you are not just failing a task. You are writing a verdict about yourself in the only court that matters, your own inner life. That verdict accumulates. The man who breaks 100 small promises to himself becomes someone who fundamentally does not believe his own word. And that disbelief, invisible, intimate, never spoken aloud, becomes the bedrock of how he moves through the world. Hesitant, seeking permission, needing external validation because internal validation has been bankrupted by 1,000 small betrayals. Epictetus, born into slavery, would have laughed at this. He had nothing, no legal freedom, no property, no guaranteed tomorrow, and yet he was, by every account, one of the most unshakable human beings who ever lived. Why? Because he had mastered the one domain that no master could touch, the domain of his own choices, his own judgments, his own internal law. He wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." That sounds simple. It is not. It is a full-time occupation. It requires you to look at your day not as a series of events happening to you, but as a series of choices being made by you. The practical reality of this law is uncomfortable. It means the reason people don't take you seriously might not be their failure to see your worth. It might be that your own behavior in private has been telling them exactly what to believe. You said you'd change. You haven't. You said you'd stop tolerating that. You're still tolerating it. You made yourself a promise at the start of this year. It is already largely forgotten. The people around you cannot see these broken promises, but they can feel the energy of a person whose interior world is at war with their exterior declarations. It vibrates through everything, through the slight over-eagerness in your voice when you need someone's approval, through the way your confidence collapses the moment someone pushes back, through the look in your eyes when you're asked a direct question and you're not sure you deserve to give a direct answer. The first law does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be congruent, to close the gap, slowly, deliberately, without drama, between what you say you are and what you actually do. One kept promise, then another, until the private record is one you can stand behind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He did not mean ignore the future. He meant the only place your authority is built is here, in this moment, in this choice, not in grand declarations about who you intend to become, in who you choose to be right now. That is where worth begins, not in how you present yourself, in who you are when the door is closed and no one is watching and the choice is entirely yours. Law 2. The law of deliberate scarcity. What you give freely is never valued. There is a principle that runs through Stoic philosophy, through economics, through nature itself, and that most people violate every single day of their lives. It is this: the value of anything is inseparable from its scarcity, not because scarcity is a manipulation, but because it is a signal. It tells the observer, this is not ordinary, this is not available everywhere. To receive this requires something. Most people dispense themselves with absolute recklessness. They are available at all hours. They respond instantly, always. They give their attention to anyone who asks. They give their time, their energy, their emotional presence, freely, immediately, without calibration. And then they wonder why people don't seem to treat them as valuable. The answer is ancient. Seneca wrote, with a directness that should strike you like cold water, "Nusquam est qui ubique est." He who is everywhere is nowhere. The man who is available to everyone has made himself worth nothing to any single person. This is not about becoming cold. It is not about playing games. It is about understanding that your presence, your full, genuine, undivided presence, is a finite resource. And like any finite resource, it has weight and gravity only when it is not spilled carelessly across every surface. Think of the people in your life who carry the most authority, not the loudest ones. The ones whose opinion actually changes how you think. What do they have in common? They are not perpetually available. They do not respond to every provocation. They do not insert themselves into every conversation. When they speak, the room shifts because they have not been speaking constantly. When they arrive, something changes because they have not been present at every moment. Deliberate scarcity is not withholding. It is direction. It is the decision to give your time and presence to what genuinely deserves it, and to withhold it from what does not out of punishment, but out of an accurate accounting of what your attention is worth. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire. He also kept a private journal of philosophical meditation. He carved out, in the most demanding life imaginable, space for his own interior world. He did not give that space away. He protected it with the same seriousness he protected Rome's borders. What are you protecting? Or have you handed everything to everyone, and now you sit empty, waiting for them to give you back a sense of worth you dispensed the moment they asked for it? The law is simple and ruthless. Govern your presence like a scarce resource because it is one. Every time you are carelessly available, you are writing down your own price, and the market around
Your fear of being alone led you settle for less how your
around you is reading it. Law 3. The law of unborrowed justification. You do not owe the world an explanation for your decisions. In the year 177 AD, Marcus Aurelius made a decision that was deeply unpopular. He appointed his son Commodus, a man of questionable character, as co-emperor. History has judged this harshly. His contemporaries challenged it loudly. He did not hold a press conference. He did not issue an explanation. He did not apologize. He made the decision with whatever reasoning his conscience required, and then he lived with it. That is not indifference. That is a man who understood that the authority of a decision comes partly from not needing to beg for its acceptance. There is a behavior so common in modern life that it has become invisible. Watch yourself tomorrow. Every time you say no to something, every time you make a choice that might not please someone, count the words that follow, not the sentence. The avalanche, the cascade of reasons, clarifications, apologies embedded in explanations, reassurances that you are still a good person despite this deviation from what they wanted. The explanation that goes on so long, the original decision is buried under it like a city under ash. This behavior has a name in psychology. It is called justification seeking, and it is, at its root, not about providing information. It is about begging for approval. It is about outsourcing the validity of your decision to the person you've just declined. You are saying, in effect, I need you to agree that my decision is acceptable before I'm allowed to feel confident in having made it. The Stoics called this a failure of the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of the mind. Epictetus was precise about this. It does not matter whether others judge your decisions favorably. What matters is whether your decisions align with reason and virtue. External judgment is noise. Responding to noise as though it were signal is a form of self-abandonment. Here is what over-explanation actually communicates to the person receiving it. First, I don't fully believe in this decision myself. Second, your acceptance of it matters more to me than the decision itself. Third, if you push back, there is a chance I will revise the decision to make you more comfortable. And the people receiving that communication are not cruel. They are just responsive to signals. They respond by pushing, by testing, by slowly taking up more space in decisions that are not theirs to make. Not because they are villains, because you have told them the boundary is negotiable. The law is this: a complete sentence is more powerful than a paragraph. I won't be able to make it is not rudeness. It is not coldness. It is a complete self-sufficient expression from a person whose decisions do not require external ratification to be valid. Notice where you over-explain. It will map precisely onto the places where you don't yet fully trust yourself. That is the real work. Not crafting better justifications, needing fewer of them, until your decision, clean, complete, unborrowed, stands on its own 2 feet, as it always could have. Law 4. The law of stillness under pressure. Composure is not weakness. It is the highest form of power. In 162 AD, Marcus Aurelius received news that the Parthian Empire had launched a devastating invasion of the Roman East. His general had been routed. Tens of thousands of soldiers were dead. The eastern frontier was collapsing. His response, as recorded by his contemporaries, was this. He considered the available information carefully, consulted his most trusted advisors, chose his most capable general, Lucius Verus, and dispatched the response with deliberation. He did not panic. He did not rage. He did not make hasty decisions designed to discharge the emotion of crisis rather than address its substance. He responded. He did not react. That distinction, response versus reaction, is at the heart of Stoic philosophy, and it is, in practical terms, one of the most powerful signals of worth that a human being can transmit. Reaction says, whatever just happened has temporarily taken control of me. It says, my behavior is downstream of your behavior. It says, if you escalate, I escalate. If you are emotional, I am emotional. If you are irrational, I will be irrational in return, because maintaining my composure in the face of your chaos requires more self-possession than I currently have. Response says something entirely different. It says, I heard you, I received what just happened, and I will engage with it on terms I have chosen, not terms you have imposed. This is not coldness. Do not mistake stillness for absence. The still center of a storm is not empty. It is enormously concentrated. Composure in the face of pressure is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of will. It is the decision, made in a fraction of a second, that this moment does not get to write your response for you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he is not saying. He is not saying, suppress your emotions. He is not saying, pretend everything is fine. He is saying, the events are not the response. There is a gap between them. And in that gap, which lasts perhaps 1 second, perhaps 3, lives the entirety of your character. The practical law here operates on a social level that is worth understanding precisely. When you react, when someone provokes you and you are immediately, visibly affected, you communicate several things. You communicate that you can be controlled. You communicate that your emotional state is available to be manipulated by whoever has the skill or the willingness to do so. And you communicate that your sense of self is not stable, that it rises and falls based on what other people say and do. That instability is read as weakness, not consciously in most cases, but the person who can rattle you has learned something about your architecture that they will not forget. Conversely, the person who cannot be rattled, who receives hostility without escalating it, who receives pressure without visibly cracking under it, who pauses where others rush, communicates something that registers below conscious thought. This person is not controlled by circumstance. This person has an interior life that is not available for hijacking. That is not a performance. It cannot be performed for long. It is built, one moment at a time, one practice at a time, until it is the actual texture of how you exist under pressure. Find your pause, not the theatrical pause, the real one, the one where you actually ask yourself, what does this moment require of me? Not what does it demand, not what am I feeling, what does it require? That question, inserted between stimulus and response, is the entirety of Stoic practice. And the people who develop the ability to ask it and answer it clearly carry an authority that nothing in the room can touch. Law 5, the law of occupied ground. Space you do not claim is space. Others fill. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, was, by all historical accounts, a presence, not a loud one, not a theatrical one. But when he walked into a space, the space changed. He did not ask for permission to be there. He arrived and he was there, fully. And the room adjusted to his presence rather than waiting to see if his presence would adjust to the room. That quality, the quality of fully, unapologetically occupying the space you are in, is one of the most underappreciated dimensions of worth. And its opposite is something almost everyone has done. You know exactly what it looks like. Sitting at the edge of a seat rather than taking it fully. Trailing off at the end of a sentence because you became uncertain the sentence deserved to be completed. Entering a room with a body language that says, I'm aware I'm taking up space and I apologize. Lowering your voice midpoint because you read a flicker of disinterest in someone's eyes and immediately concluded your thought was not worth its original volume. This shrinking is not modesty. Modesty is a virtue. It is the accurate recognition that you are not more than you are. But shrinking is something else. It is the false claim that you are less than you are. It is a preemptive apology for your own existence, issued before anyone has asked for it. And here is the mechanism by which it harms you. Social reality is largely constructed. It is built from the signals people send each other about how to be treated. When you send consistent signals of smallness, through posture, through hesitation, through the slight apologetic edge in your voice when you haven't done anything to apologize for, those around you receive that signal and without malice or even awareness, act on it. They fill the space you've left empty. They speak over the trailing edge of your sentences. They interrupt because you've broadcast that interruption is acceptable. They discount your input because you've discounted it first. Seneca wrote about the virtue of what he called firmitas, a word that means firmness, but in the sense of being fully present and fully committed to one's own stance, not aggression, not dominance, simply the full, unhesitating occupation of who you are and where you are. The practical application of this law is physical before it is psychological. Your body is a transmitter. It is broadcasting your internal state in real time, whether you are aware of it or not. The way you hold your spine, the quality of your eye contact, the pace at which you speak, the breath behind your words. These are not superficial things. They are the first layer of communication, received and processed before a single word is evaluated for content. You cannot think your way into occupying space fully. You have to practice it physically. Sit down fully. Speak at the volume your thought deserves. Complete your sentences. Look at people when you speak to them. Not because you're performing confidence, but because you have made a decision to stop actively performing smallness, which is what shrinking is. The world did not ask you to make yourself small. That was a decision you made, probably long ago for reasons that no longer apply. Unmake it, not all at once. Just stop apologizing for being there, because you were always supposed to be there. The question is whether you're willing to act like it. Law 6. The law of clean endings. The inability to release what has expired is self-abandonment in slow motion. There is a passage in the Meditations that reads like a surgeon's note more than a philosophical reflection. Marcus Aurelius writes, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." He is writing about the cost of holding on, not just to relationships, to positions, to roles, to self-images, to any version of reality that requires you to betray your own integrity in order to maintain it. We are, as a species, extraordinarily bad at ending things. Relationships that have dissolved into obligation and mutual resentment, maintained because ending them feels like failure. Friendships that exist only in the past tense, sustained by guilt and the inertia of long history. Roles in families, in workplaces, in relationships that we have outgrown but continue to inhabit because someone else needs us to stay small enough to fit. And here is the precise way this destroys your worth in the eyes of others. When you stay past the point where staying serves you or them, you make an announcement. You announce that you do not believe your presence is something that needs to be earned and reciprocated. You announce that you will absorb mistreatment, undervaluation, and stagnation because the alternative, the terrifying alternative, is to claim enough worth to leave. People learn from this, not consciously, but they learn that your presence is not precious, that it does not require care, that it can be taken for granted, pushed to its limits, tested repeatedly, because you have demonstrated through sustained presence in the face of diminishment that you will not leave. And things we cannot lose we do not value. The Stoics were brutally clear on this. Marcus Aurelius did not advise clinging to any external thing, position, relationship, or comfort, at the cost of internal integrity. He advised amor fati, love of fate. But fate here does not mean accept everything as it is forever. It means accept the reality of what is, including the reality that this thing has run its course. The willingness to end things that have ended is one of the most unambiguous signals of self-worth available to you. It says, my time has direction. My energy has value. My presence is not a default setting. It is a choice made daily, and it goes where it is met with equivalent value. This does not mean burning things down. The Stoic conception of wisdom is not destruction, it is discernment. There is an enormous difference between the dramatic exit designed to punish and the quiet withdrawal designed to protect. You do not owe anyone an explosion. You do not owe anyone a speech, a conversation that gets slightly shorter, a presence that gradually steps back, an internal decision made without announcement. This is no longer mine to carry. And what happens when you make that decision and honor it? Two things. First, the people who remain, who stay in the space you've reclaimed, meet a version of you with more to give, because you are no longer hemorrhaging energy into things that stopped deserving it. Second, even the people you leave, especially them, receive a message they will process long after you've gone. That message is this: your worth was not unconditional. It was not infinitely available regardless of how it was treated. And that message, received in retrospect, teaches them something that years of presence never could. End what has ended. Not with bitterness, not with fanfare, with the quiet, clean authority of someone who finally understands that their presence is not a burden to be distributed wherever it is demanded. It is a gift. And gifts given without discernment are not gifts. They are liabilities. Law 7. The law of the unreadable interior. The most powerful thing you can carry is a self that cannot be fully mapped. This is the law the other 6 have been building toward. And it is the one that will, if you truly understand it, change the way you move through every room you ever enter again. Here is a psychological reality that most people navigate without ever naming. Human beings are instinctively drawn to what they cannot fully comprehend. Not what is mysterious in a theatrical sense, the deliberately cryptic, the performed enigma. That reads as insecurity wearing a costume. What draws people, what commands lasting respect and attention, is a person whose depth they cannot reach the bottom of. A person who, the more you interact with them, reveals new dimensions rather than exhausting themselves. The opposite of this is the person who has emptied themselves entirely on first encounter, who tells you everything, who explains every decision, justifies every position, volunteers every insecurity, performs every strength, who is, within a few hours of knowing them, entirely known. And once fully known, fully mapped, they become, in the most psychological sense of the word, ordinary. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the Meditations, again a private document written for himself alone, about the cultivation of what he called the inner citadel. He used an image, the rational self, as a fortress that the external world, with all its noise and pressure and turbulence, could surround but never penetrate. That image is not just philosophical comfort. It is a description of a quality that is visible from the outside. The person with a genuine inner citadel, a private interior life that is rich, disciplined, and not available for wholesale display, moves differently than someone who has no private interior. They are less easily destabilized. They are less hungry for approval. They are less reactive to provocation. They are less compelled to fill silences with self-disclosure. And all of this, every element of it, reads as depth, as authority, as someone who has resources you have not yet discovered. The law is not about being secretive. It is not about withholding as manipulation. It is about something far more fundamental, having an interior that is worth protecting, having thoughts you've thought to their conclusion before speaking them, having positions you've tested against serious alternatives before defending them, having a self that has been cultivated, not just lived in, the way a master craftsman's hands carry decades of practiced precision that is not available for casual inspection. This is the work the other 6 laws have been preparing you for. When you keep your private commitments, you build an interior worth having. When you govern your presence as a scarce resource, you create a self that is not dispersed. When you stop over-explaining, you stop handing your interior to anyone who asks. When you maintain composure under pressure, you demonstrate an interior that is not at the mercy of externals. When you occupy your ground fully, you announce that your interior deserves the space it takes. When you release what has expired, you protect the integrity of what remains. All of it builds toward this. A person who is genuinely interesting in the deepest sense, not performing interest, being it. A person who, when they speak, carries behind the words the weight of a private life that has been seriously lived. Who, when they are silent, is not empty but occupied. Who, when they look at you, brings to the moment a depth of perspective that did not arrive by accident. Epictetus said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." That tranquility, that deep, unperturbed settledness, is not a passive quality. It is the product of an interior life that has been built deliberately, protected seriously, and never fully surrendered to the judgment of others. The person who carries that quality does not announce their worth. They embody it. Every choice they make, every silence they hold, every provocation they decline to match, all of it points, quietly but unmistakably, to an interior that is larger than what the surface reveals. And that is the deepest signal of worth there is. Not what you claim, not what you perform, what you actually are in private when no one is watching, when the performance is over and the choice is entirely yours. That is what people feel. That is what commands respect. That is what cannot be faked, cannot be borrowed, and cannot be taken from you. 7 laws, none of them requiring a different personality, none of them requiring a reinvention. All of them available to you today, not tomorrow, not after you've become someone else, but now, in the life you are already living. That is what makes this both harder and more hopeful than it first appears. There is no single turning point you're waiting for, no dramatic moment of transformation. The Stoics knew, and history has confirmed, that character is not built in moments of crisis. It is built in the texture of ordinary days, in the 1,000 small choices that nobody sees. Keep your word to yourself in private, and your authority in public follows. Govern your presence with deliberate scarcity, and people feel your gravity. Stop over-explaining, and your decisions begin to carry their own weight. Find the pause between stimulus and response, and your composure becomes your most visible quality. Occupy your ground without apology, and the room adjusts to you instead of asking you to adjust to it. Release what has expired, and your remaining presence becomes rare and valuable. Cultivate the unreadable interior, and you become someone the world cannot stop trying to understand. That person, the one at the end of that list, is not a future version of you. They are the current version, minus the accumulated habits of smallness you have been carrying long past the point they served any purpose. The Stoics did not promise that following these laws would make life easy. They promised something better. They promised that it would make you sovereign over your choices, over your responses, over the signal you send the world about what you are worth. And once the signal changes, once it is consistent enough and sustained long enough, the world has no choice but to read it accurately. Choose one law. Start today. Not all 7. 1. Practice it until it is not a practice anymore. Until it is simply who you are. The rest will follow. It always does. Walk steady.